Okay.
All right. Okay, so character outcome 5 is the last one, and that has to do with a healthy family and conflict resolution, and then it also has to do with a local church and doing an assessment of your local church.
Uh-huh.
So we'll start with the local church one. What you really, at the heart of what you need to do is create a doctrinal statement on the church. That a church is this. Okay, so if you look at the Bible and say, okay, well, what is the essence of a church? Well, let's assume that it's got elders and deacons. Those are the two main kind of roles that it would teach. A church is not a building, but it is in a physical location, but it's much more than that. It's the people that make it up. A church is, in our world today, it's both believers and unbelievers in a church, but and if you look at the actual church that's going to be saved and be with Jesus, it's just true believers. And so you may want to make that distinction. So you want to come up with whatever this doctrinal statement is from the scriptures. Because once you get that doctrinal statement, the rest of it's pretty straightforward. You're going to go from the doctrinal statement to then creating a framework that you can use to analyze your church. You can do this in conjunction with your leadership, or you simply can do this as an exercise. And with the time constraints you have, and I don't know, with your newer situation in the church, you may not have the relational capital to do that. So you may just want to say, you know what, we're just going to do this. So you do then create a framework based on that. So the framework would be, that there needs to be this kind of leadership structure. There needs to be this kind of commitment to the Great Commission, or whatever you're going to say, what defines a church. Okay.
Mhm.
Then once you have that framework, then you're going to use that framework as an assessment tool. Our
Okay.
church does have this kind of leadership, and our church is going after this. Because that's why I say the doctrinal statement is the most important part of it. Because out of that comes the framework, and then the framework becomes the assessment tool,
Okay.
right? And then
Can we do this, the two of us, like together, or has to be separate? Each one has
no,
to
by all
do.
means, do it together.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're going to the same church.
And then what you want to do is, once you've done the assessment, you just choose one of those areas and say, if I could wave a magic wand, I would have them do this. So it could be in the area of evangelism or discipleship.
Mhm.
Like a
But
suggestion, right?
what's that?
Like a suggestion.
Yeah. But again, it's because unless you're the head person in the church, then you don't have any power to see that happen. And that's why I'm saying, if you had more time and your leadership were, this may be your case, where you have a relationship where you could actually say, I see this, and we could do this together. And at the end, you'd say, well, this is what we see, and we'd like to see this happen with the area of evangelism or discipleship, or we need a better leadership structure, or whatever. Or we don't preach from the word, we need to start preaching from the word.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's what, and then just use the learning experience to help you create your doctrinal statement. One thing that Wayne does is he does a good job of laying out the metaphors for a church. Like the church is a body, and so you can say, okay, well, what in that idea of a body would help me to understand um,
Or is a
creating
bride,
the
right?
doctrinal statement. What's that? Or the bride of Christ, right? So for the body, that it's one, yet it has individual parts, and the individual parts work together for the betterment of the body, or the bride of Christ, right? That there's a time where the church is going to be presented in its fullness and its glory. So,
Okay.
but you can use those things to help you create your doctrinal statement. You can also look at other doctrinal statements that might exist. Maybe your church has a doctrinal statement for what a church is, but you're only wanting to look at the church aspect, the ecclesiology part. It's not a doctrinal statement on the nature of God and who Christ is and the Holy Spirit. Your only concern is the church.
La eclesiología,
Mhm.
ecclesiology.
You can do a word study on the word ecclesia if you wanted. It's used in both the Old and the New Testament. Uh, And so, again, I wouldn't spend a lot of time there because it's just a gathering of people. In the Old Testament, it can be believers or unbelievers. And in the New Testament, really, it's the same thing. When you're in a church, you don't know who's who, right? It's not until the wheat and the tares and Jesus does the final judgment that we're going to know who's what. So that's really the essence of that learning experience.
Carl,
Yes.
the other day, Vanya and I just used the 8-step process, and we were going through the verses in Revelation, which was talking about the different aspects of the church that were honored in different locations. And I was very astounded at how that really does lay out what the church as a body is to be doing and not doing. Just from those 2 or 3 chapters.
Yeah, and I went over this with Vanya. That's a good point, Nita. I appreciate you bringing that up. Is when you look at Revelation 2 and 3, there is a pattern to those, the way it's laid out. It lays out, I think, Christ's identity, and then it's going to say that, what's the next one? Oh, it's going to give a description, right? Here's how that church reflects who Christ is, and then it's going to give them a commendation, and then it's going to give them a warning. So the commendations, you can say, okay, well, this is what a church should be about. I think that's what Nita's referring to. And then here are the warnings. This is what a church needs to avoid. But generally, in your doctrinal statement, you're not going to put the avoid part. You know what I mean? But the commendations could also be helpful as you're trying to construct
what the church is to be. I had never done that before, and it was just very insightful.
Okay, so that's also available too. So get the doctrinal statement, create a framework. And that's like your graphic organizer. Then once you have your framework, you turn that into an assessment tool, and then you choose one of those categories and say, this is what we'd like to see improved.
So can you rephrase that last part in the assessment tool? So we just kind of like, after we do the assessment to our church, then we have kind of recommendation, right?
Yeah, you would just take one of those areas, because you may have multiple, but you just take one. If I could do one thing, this is what I think would help our church become more healthy.
Okay.
And to say we can do this together. It's
Correct.
not just
100%.
Yes. I wonder if they could even use some of that research that the Mexico team has done on the analysis of the verses. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I mean, because again, you can go to what they've done in terms of the word studies. If it was on the word ecclesia, you can also go to the Blue Letter Bible, and you can just put in, when you see the word church and you see the Greek word ecclesia, you just click on that. It'll give you all its appearances, and then you can actually just go in that. They'll always have like Thayer. Here, let me pull it up. Because Thayer's will have, it'll give you a good picture of just a summary, and that way you're not having to do the whole process. Or if the Mexican team has done the process, you can then just look and say, oh, this is what the Mexican team said, here's what Thayer says, and combine the two.
You, Carl?
Yes.
Nita, you there?
I'm here, yes.
Yeah, we lost you for
Have you lost me?
No. You're back.
No, yeah.
Okay. I'm just pulling up the Blue Letter Bible here. So let me, I'll share my screen. So let's see. Let's find a place where, so we'll do the study. You go to study and you go to interlineary here. Right? And then if we pick a verse, we want to pick a verse where the word church appears. So we'll go to Matthew 16. Let's see here. There we go.
We start to envision the leadership of the church. They all have the 4th law. Oliver was invited to do a preaching, a sermon, about Matthew 28, of course, of the Great Commission. And the people were pleased, but maybe now just trying to see what we can help them. That is our strength as crew and as individual, as Christian, about to make disciples and the multiplication, because everything is related with the pastor. He do an beautiful study of the Bible. It's amazing. Each Sunday, always I learn something new. It's very biblical based, but maybe how he can multiply.
Drink coffee, honey. Drink
coffee. See, I need it.
Yeah. So then, I mean, you may have already identified an area, right? Whether it's evangelism or discipleship, or if you're combining those two, and that might be your assessment that this is what could happen, and then this is how we could contribute to helping in building that and making it stronger. If you're looking, if you're trying to do a word study, you can go here and you just punch on the word, right? Ecclesia, so that's the word church. And then if you go down here, you've got dictionary views here, and so they'll give you a definition. And so here's a good definition right here, and this may help you. A gathering of citizens in a home, assembly of people. So you see gathering, assembly, and it's going to give you those. So that would be one aspect of your, because some people, especially during the COVID era, right, they may say, oh, we don't need to actually meet. We can do it virtually. And you may say, well, the word ecclesia means to gather. Is this a gathering? If it is, can you serve in this kind of a gathering? Can everybody exercise and see the gifts being used? Those kind of things may not be happening. So, but you can use, like Nita said, the Mexican team has done some work on a word study, I think, for ecclesia. You can use that, but you can use Blue Letter Bible. You don't have to look for every verse and do the word study yourself. There's tools that are there. You've already learned the 8-step process. They've already implemented it. So I know the process. So I'm not worried about that aspect. Use Pathright to look at the illustrations that Wayne uses, the metaphors that are used to help us to understand the nature of the church. And then just consider the New Testament, right? All of Paul's letters are addressing church issues. All non-Pauline letters are not really focused on the church, but on Christians and their activities. And so I would not focus on those as much as I would focus on Paul's letters. And then you're just saying, okay, well, if I'm looking at a book like 1 Corinthians, he's dealing with problems. Okay, and so then the problem is, here's the misuse of gifts in 12 through 14, right? Well, therefore, there is a proper use of gifts, and it would be governed by love, and that would be chapter 13. So you might incorporate that into your doctrinal statement. Or if you're looking at the book of Ephesians, he always starts with a doctrinal part, and then he ends with a practical part. So that may be a part of your doctrinal statement, that we need to have the preaching of the word, but the preaching of the word can never be divorced from the actual living out of the word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good. I have a question. In terms of Pathright, should we go through the process also to understand, or what is your recommendation on Pathright?
I always like to do that. I don't know, to get my
I think Pathright is going to be useful again, but use it as a resource.
Okay.
And if you know something, just say, okay, I know this, go to the next thing. Oh, I know this, go to the next thing. Just like when you were talking about how Carlos taught you to read a book, right? Here's the title, here's the first paragraph. Okay, now I get the sense of what it's about. I can read the first sentence of every paragraph. You want to use that to stimulate your thinking and to sharpen your ability to understand the topic. If you already understand something, then you just move on.
Okay.
Can you show us, please, the Pathright?
Yeah, I have those up, so that'll be very easy for me to do. So here's, which one would you like me to start with?
Just to see related to this project.
Okay, all right.
3, right? Or
is it
all right,
3
so
or
here's the
1?
here's the one on family. I have 2 tabs. I can just toggle. So let me start with the church, since we were talking about the church. You can see the one. You can see this, correct?
Yes.
Biblical framework for a healthy local church. Okay. So you have the introduction, you're going to have some steps there, building a framework. That's what we were talking about, right? That comes out of your doctrinal statement. All right. Then going from a biblical framework to an assessment tool. That's what we talked about. You create your doctrinal statement, then you've got a framework. The framework just is a graphic organizer of your doctrinal statement. And then from that framework in your doctrinal statement, you're going to create an assessment tool. And then how you use your assessment tool then just to evaluate the church. So again, there's nothing new, really new, and then sharing your results with your church leadership. If you're not going to do that, then I wouldn't worry about it at this stage. But it's just it's a word of caution, because church leaders can be very sensitive. I mean, just like it's like parenting, right? If you start telling me how to parent my kids, I may actually get upset with you. I mean, a lot of parents don't want to hear that. If they invite you in, that's a whole different issue.
Yes.
You know, if they say, hey, we're really struggling with our children, could you help us? That's different than me saying, wow, I'm seeing that you're really struggling with your kids, and I think if you did A, B, and C, you'd be fine.
Yes.
Right? So it's that idea. So that's how it's laid out. It's pretty much what we just talked about in terms of the local church. So again, if you're going through this, here's an overview. We've already done the overview. You can look at it, or you can just say, okay, done that, check. Use the 8-step process, understand that. Desire for church purity. Again, this is just an introduction involving church leadership. This is how you could possibly do that. But again, if you're not going to involve them, then at this point, that may not be helpful. And then here's how you actually do the framework. It looks at the word ecclesia, okay? And then it's going to look at these metaphors. And then these are all the metaphors, you know, church's mission, church and purity of the church role. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not. You get the metaphors, and then issue of church discipline. That's going to be a big one. You're going to want to make sure you think about that and include that part. The ordinances, baptism, and communion, and what that looks like. Elders and deacons, and then discipleship, which would involve evangelism, discipleship, and sending. So again, some of those parts are not new to you, and chances are none of them are really new. But you want to look and just say, do I know? Am I familiar? And how will that help me to create this doctrinal statement? Okay.
Right.
Then you go from formulating a church assessment tool. You've done that with a S3 leader, right? So you know how to move from a doctrinal statement to an assessment tool or a framework, and then just how you actually implement that. So that's, I think that this is very doable for you guys. And then the second one, well, do you have any questions on that one for Nita or I?
I was thinking our time.
Timing.
No, yes, timing. Because Nita, you will travel. You won't be able the last week of May, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
don't worry about the timing, because I think I may be traveling too, but somebody will be covering this whole section, or you can make a recording again. I have no problem with that. But what we will do is make sure every time we can meet, we'll meet, and that if you have any questions, you just immediately WhatsApp us.
So
You say, hey, I got a question, and this is what I'm thinking. Or I finished the doctrinal statement. Could you take a look at it? And then we'll immediately look at it, and then just create your framework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can work very hard this week so we can present this part next week, because you will travel 2 weeks. You think it's not possible?
So.
Yeah, honestly, I think, you know, again, if you use other doctrinal statements on the church that you can find online and do your own research, I mean, that's part of the process. Use this and then just create your doctrinal statement. A church is, and it's got these following components, and then create a framework out of that. And I think by next week you could do those I think you could do that.
So that would be May the 4th. You think that's feasible?
Yeah,
Well, we'll try. You know, this is a battle, so we're
we don't have
you know?
we don't have option, because Oliver, he will travel in 2 weeks for whole week.
Yeah.
So if
So ideally, if we could do it May 4th, it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just do what you can do. Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
And then the second one is the strengthening your family and the conflict resolution. And what you want to do here is there's a lot of information there, but I'll talk about the first half and I'll let Nita do the second half. You're gonna,
I thought, haven't we already kind of gone over this with them and they've figured out what they're doing?
are you guys good? Do you have a project all in mind?
Well, you mentioned it about you did an idea about the about express of learning experience through the problem of with the house,
Yes.
how that was for us. We need to resolve conflict because we were kind of a stress. Oliver has a point of view. I have another point of view in some moments. So how that help us to strengthen our family, I don't know. But we need to see the path right just to see if this is the what God wants for us.
I believe for this second part of it on the conflict resolution, that would be very fitting on the for the project. And you could use the peacemaker concepts of negotiate. You know, there's nine or so different ways, and you utilized like go into the peacemaking one, Carl, and right there down to the chart. Yeah. Like right there in the middle, you used various of those strategies. And I think it would be real easy to write that up utilizing that particular situation. Because it was an amazing victory. If you want to, I mean,
Yeah, we can use the example of the house. Or
yes.
even when we couldn't have kids. That was a very stressful moment.
Yes.
But then, yeah, we had to learn to work it out, and other people help us in the process too. So yeah, we can choose then. We have got a bunch
may
of
want to, just to piggyback on that for the first part, then let me go back here. So you have this, and you can write that up, but then you also, it's dealing with you as a couple, right? Because it sounded like from what you were saying is that you both had a different way that you wanted to actually see this resolved. Is that correct?
Well, not the result, but in the process, maybe. Well, in terms of the house, yeah.
Yeah, for example, well, we always are different in our opinions.
We are.
So this is not for the project, this is life.
Yeah.
For example, yeah, the way of engaging in the situation, sometimes it was very different because of her temperament or my temperament.
But we complement each other, and we got one.
But we wrestle a lot, so we are very transparent. So we wrestle both
You
of us.
negotiate.
And then we
Yeah.
and then we have a common point where we feel confident where we're gonna move ahead. But yeah, we wrestle a lot. We never keep anything from
Oliver
each
is
other.
agreeable, and I am not. So yeah, just to begin.
Yeah.
With that,
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again. You are what, and what is Oliver?
I'm an agreeable person. She's a disagreeable person.
Oh, okay. So then, part of that then is you can look at what are the roles and responsibilities of a husband and wife, right? You can look at the biblical ones, and then you can say, okay, well, when we approach this problem on the conflict resolution side, how did we fulfill our roles and responsibilities as a couple? Or how did we fulfill our role as a husband and wife, but more really as a married couple, right? Because there's three elements of that. And then when what is there a tendency as you're trying to resolve conflicts that you just say, you know what, the biblical idea of how marriage is supposed to work, we're going to set that aside for right now so we can work this out? Or do you say, no, those are the lane lines we have to work within as we're trying to resolve this problem? You know what I mean? So you have the actual conflict resolution elements, but those fit within a framework of how do you as a husband and wife function biblically within your
Okay.
roles and responsibilities. So
Okay.
you can
Like,
capture all of that.
do you complement each other in the way you solve issues that arise?
Yeah, and again,
And are you egalitarian in the way you actually come to the final conclusions even? So
yeah,
going in,
again, I don't want to get into those things. All I want you to do is you're going to have to come up with your own theological thing. You can do the complementarian side, you can do the egalitarian side. I'm not worried about which side you go on. All I want to know is that you have a biblical framework and you understand your roles and responsibilities as a husband and wife. And that within that, when you do come together and you have a conflict, do you stay within those biblical guidelines? Because if you don't, then you're moving in the area of sin, right? And so that's where you want to say, okay, our tendency is this, and that's really positive, but we have another tendency, which is this, and that's where we move out of that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where you can say, well, I'm just going to give up and you just make all the decisions. Well, that's not a good way. You know, if you're the husband and you're looking more on a complementarian side and say, well, I'm supposed to lead. If I give up, that's not it. If it's egalitarian and you're exercising just a really firm hand and you just got to do what I say because that's just the way it is, well, that may not be the biblical way. So you're going to have to figure out theologically where are you at as a couple. And then based on what you understand the scriptures to be and say about you as your roles and responsibilities as a husband and wife, therefore, we need to, within this kind of a very stressful situation, and with our girls, this is how we need to then act. And so you can capture all of that using that, because that's been a very long saga for you, a very long journey. And I think it would really raises a lot of issues, is you simply capture what took place and say, I think we learned this and we learned this, and I think we could do better in this area in the end. And I would be very satisfied with that. Because that's taking a very real, very stress-filled situation that very often reveals what's going on in your hearts. And then saying, we're going to actually now reflect on that as a couple, both in the area of how it reflects our understanding of biblical marriage and how we express that and live that out, and also how we learn how to resolve conflict. And so I think all of those are incorporated within that.
Okay. Maybe
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we should bring the issue of dishwashing. It can help us this project. No, super excellent. No, definitely. I would love it because I think that it will help us a lot in this journey together.
Yeah, and the way.
So what I understand is then we are going to create a framework. It could be like a graphic organizer too, visually speaking, or.
No, you any way you want to. It could be just you're going to write it. And if that's what you want to do is just write it. Here, let me get rid of this. If you want just to write a summary and say, okay, here's how we understand the roles and responsibilities. So for example, if you look at the way this is laid out, here's the learning to listen to your spouse. There's a section there. You can see how that helped. Roles and responsibility of a husband and wife, those are there. Then also, I think something that's going to be very helpful for you is this first one with the 4 steps, the place of marriage in the plan of God. Really understanding what is the biblical basis for marriage, because you have marriage in our world today, but we won't have marriage in heaven. And so you have to really say, well, what's the purpose of marriage here then? Right? It's got to have some kind of unique purpose that it doesn't then need in heaven. So really understanding that will help you to. Why are you smiling, by the way?
So am I smart about it?
Oh, that she's not going to be married. That's great. That just is a testament of how much she loves
at
you.
the beginning when I knew that it was what? but so much effort in this earth, so.
I would encourage you then spend your a good amount of time here.
Okay.
And then make sure you understand here's the unmarried. That's not going to be real relevant to what you're going to focus on, but you have to work with single people all the time within the context of with your roles. And then the place of faith in marriage, again, that's not going to be new to you. Roles and responsibilities, I think that's going to be a helpful one for what you're going to do. The role of faith would also be that, learning to listen to your spouse. And then there's these other things, divorce. Again, I wouldn't spend a lot of time there. It would fill out your understanding of what a healthy family is. And if you come from a divorced situation, understanding that Deuteronomy 24 really is the core of understanding Jesus' teaching on that, then again, use that as something that's going to help you. The other parts, abusive marriages, again, I think Zulma, from what you have shared with your sister, if I recall, there may be issues here. Is that right? Do I remember this correctly, or am I not remembering correctly?
Yes, maybe because the machism in our culture. Maybe my mom was more, it's another kind of submission. Yeah, it's not that biblical submission.
Okay. So whatever's helpful here, and then I would just skip the sinful aberrations of marriage. I don't think that's going to be super helpful. And then you have an application which seems pretty integrated if you use the conflict resolution in the marriage side. And then you don't have to create any kind of a diagram or a picture unless that's helpful and that it helps you express it, but more just chronicling that, okay, this is what we understand a biblical marriage to be. Here's the role, Oliver's roles and responsibility. Here's Zulma's roles and responsibility. In this conflict, we stayed within those roles and responsibilities. And this is what it looked like. Or we didn't, and this was what it looked like, and this was the result.
Yeah. And one question, I don't know if you have been using the art of marriage. Yeah, we have been using that, and in the past, we have there are topics that help us go through those things, because we want to review, maybe to create that as you mentioned, the biblical framework that is already, we have been seeing that and using, actually, by the way, even when we are different, as Nita mentioned, we complement each other. But our smart plan is that we have been seeing so many opportunities here with couples. So this is part of one we want to focus as well, to do that with the using this material, because it's very professional, it's already there, and already talk about those topics. So what do you think about it?
If you want to do that, then what I would do is I wouldn't do all the other stuff. I would do the conflict resolution part that Nita's talking about, and then I would design whatever you're going to do using this material and putting it into smart plan. Who's your target audience? How many sessions are you going to have? How are you going to do it? And I would just outline that, and that would be suffice for the first part.
Yeah, because it's natural right now. Everything is taking us to begin a group in the house when we move.
That's great. Yeah, then I would just walk us through the process of how that's going to take place. And then at the end, you create your smart plan and you're good to go.
Okay. Yeah, because we really need that. Actually, we live in a city. That's why that was one of the reasons to move here, because in Panama City already we have a team, and here we don't have, so we are kind of pioneers. So this is a very important and necessary thing here.
Excellent. Yeah, I would definitely do that then. I mean, it sounds like you already have, it's something that's already in your minds and you want to do. And so it's not extra, so I would definitely just do that. And then from what Nita said, I would capture how you work through the conflict of the house and resolving that both with the person that you had the problem with, but also probably within your own marriage and how that worked itself out.
Okay.
And honestly, if you already have the plan for the art of marriage, right? I would just start doing that. I think you could give us a pretty clear picture of what you want to do next week. That's not a lot of extra work, because I think you already have that. And then just start reading through Pathright for greater understanding. Because I think you will find that Pathright is going to supplement this quite well. There are topics that people are going to ask more about, the issues of, what is the biblical basis for marriage? I mean, this paints some good things, but it doesn't go as deep, maybe theologically, as the learning experience will.
Okay.
So, well, that's good. So it sounds like you have clarity, if I'm not mistaken. And so in your minds, what are you going to do for character outcome 5 on the healthy marriage and the conflict resolution? What are the 2 things you're going to do?
I mean, you can answer my throat is.
It's to do a competency about conflict resolution using the example. We want to pray together, so see maybe there are other examples. So if we do the house or the topic of the children or another topic that maybe we need it right now, we need to see. This is one part, and the another part is to go through our smart plan and what God is already putting in our heart, that what we have been doing in the past, we did that, but as well what we want to do in the future, and maybe go through the path, right, to see more deep in the biblical basis, maybe because this is more just to go deeper.
Okay. All right. I think you're good. I think those are 2 really helpful things, and it sounds like you're one you've experienced, the other one you've already also experienced, but you also have a vision for your new place.
Yeah. So then we have around a month, right?
Less than a month, because you will travel 1 week.
So 3 weeks. No, let me see how many weeks. So will be May. Let's say 1, 2, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. We have just 3 weeks.
And in Venezuela, I don't have data. I don't have even internet there.
You have pretty busy schedule too.
So I would try to get as much done as you can right now. And again, because the art of marriage stuff you've already done, you already have a pretty good idea. Just lay out your plan.
Okay.
And then read Pathright, and that'll suffice.
Yes. Yeah.
So then how will be this next master's assessment of the CO5? How do we want to do it?
Well, let's see where you guys are next week, and then we'll talk through what that could look like.
Okay. Perfect.
Better.
Perfect.
Well, thanks.
It's possible we could do the church part next week, and then maybe the week of the 18th we could do, or the 17th, sometime that week we might do, because you'll be back. The middle week there is when you're in Venezuela, right?
Yeah.
And so then
from the 7th to the 13th.
So maybe on the 18th we could do the family and then put those 2 together. Having those 2 both done, that would be your master assessment for it, if we just recorded it like we have today.
Okay.
So, and you can do them in any order, whatever one you think is going to take you more time. I would allot more time for that, obviously. Do you know what I mean? So if next week you think you could finish the one on the healthy family and the conflict resolution, and that would be an easier one for you to do, then I would do that one first. Because then you can be working on the other one simultaneously, but you have more time.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Which one do you
The
think?
family one.
The family one.
But at the same time, we have to do Pathright at least in the other one, so it start to work.
Nita mentioned 18, right? To do the another one.
Yeah, let's see if we can do it in the 18th by faith.
So which week you will travel in car as well? Which one?
I think it's going to be the 22nd, 23rd. It's going to be the last part of the finishing things. If Nita's not there and I'm not there, I will make sure that either Henry or Davey is here, if there's anything that needs to be wrapped up.
Okay. Perfect.
Right.
Well, we will do it.
We'll do it.
We have a plan.
We're confident. All right. Well, maybe Nita, you can pray for this lovely couple, and we'll let them work hard, and we'll just keep praying for you guys.
Thank you.
Dear God, thank you so much for this time that we've been able to work together today. I love and thank you for the insights that you have given Oliver and Zulma in regards to the cultural differences within the team where they're working. And I just pray that you will bless their work even more because of these understandings. Father, I also ask that you would be with Oliver in his travels to Venezuela. I know that team must feel very honored that he has gone to great lengths to be able to join them. And I pray that you will keep him safe and that it will be a very productive time. I also pray for Zulma and her staying home with her girls, that you would just give them some great times together and bless them and protect them. Now, as Oliver and Zulma continue to work on these projects, I pray that they will be given grace and speed to be able to accomplish these tasks in a way that you will find pleasing. And I thank you so much for this beautiful family. And I pray these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
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 Thank you so much.